Florida, so I haven't answered any of them.
Yeah,
Because what can I do from here?
that's true. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Okay, so Tammy, you were the one that requested this class, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. You're wanting me to kind of go over all of the documents you need for a listing appointment and kind of how I explain the form to a seller. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
Totally. Let me get some paper and pencil real quick.
Okay.
that was my biggest, like, yeah, is
Okay.
explaining the forms. I've never had to explain the forms because I'm a COVID agent. We just sent it to them because there was nothing, leased them out face to face, and they just signed them. And like now I just had this where they wanted everything explained from when I did the listing and the buyers. And
Good.
it
This
was,
is your name. This is your address. No, just kidding.
well, and I was like, I don't know. I just gave them like general and hoped I was right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can definitely go over that. So I've opened up a new transaction. This is 123 Main Street, and it's a residential listing. And then, just real briefly, I like to come in here and do my property summary right here on this first page, getting my parcel number in there, address. I put all of that in here first. And then the next thing I do, I like to go to parties. Once you have your people listed under parties, they're going to populate. Their emails are already going to be saved in the files. So when you send out an e-sign, all of that is already there. So I said buyers, but this is going to be seller number 1. So that is going to be, we're going to be really original here. This is going to be John Doe. Okay, and then you would put in their email, and then you can click right here, save as contact. Once you've saved a client as a contact in your car, it's there forever. So if you're helping them purchase a home and you're going to be writing multiple transactions, instead of having to go back and figure out what their email is every single time, you can just save them into your address book and they're already there. You can also do this is a side tip, nothing to do with listings, but you can also, as you are doing transaction, you can save agent information. So if you are doing business with an agent, you're doing more than one transaction in a year with a specific agent. I mean, how helpful would it be for their email, their phone number, their DRE, their brokerage information? Wouldn't that be so cool if everything was just saved in your car? And then you could just import them right here from your address book. So remember just to come into the parties and click save as contact when you're adding people in here, and it will make your life so easy. Okay, so seller 1 is going to be John Doe, and then I'm going to be the listing agent, and I'm going to show you guys how easy. I have myself added in my address book. So I just come in here, Kelly Zimmerman, done. And then see all my information just pops in. I don't have to fill any of it out. It's already here. So now all of that is loaded into my documents already. So you want to do your property summary, add your parties, then you're going to go to documents. Okay. So right here, I have an old template that I haven't, I need to come in here and change my template. So I'm going to pull out that one, and then I'm going to go over with you the different documents that are required. And it's always changing. So the required documents that are needed today, that does not mean that's what's going to be needed a few months from now. So, Sky Slope tells us what is required when we enter in a new listing. So, this could change, but I'll show you what is required as of today. So obviously the listing agreement, that's number 1, that's in there. Market conditions advisory, the SPQ, the TDS, The earthquake hazard report is only if the home is built previous to 1960. Okay, so you only need the earthquake hazard report if the home is built 1960 or later. Oh, that might be changing. Nick says that may be changing. And also, just an update while we're all here, the new RPA is going to be coming out soon. So we're going to have all kinds of training that we're going to need to do on that. And I believe you can actually take a class in CAR right now if you want to be proactive and kind of learn that ahead of the curve. They are offering classes in there. Okay, but we're dealing with listings, so I'll be quiet. Okay, so we got the MCA, we got the SPQ, TDS. Okay, so the DIA needs to be added. That's the Disclosure Information Advisory. We also have the new one, the FD.
I'm taking
Oh,
a class. I'm in a meeting.
FH,
Disclosure information.
Fire Hardening and Defensible Space. Okay, that's the other one. I think that's it. I think these are all of the
KLA.
FALA. That's the new one. Thank you. KLA.
Yes.
I knew there was one I was missing. Okay, KLA is here.
So Kelly, it sounds like you do all of your SkySlope required disclosures at the time you take the RLA
I
versus
do.
just doing, okay. Because in the past, like I've just taken my RLA, like the MCA, KLA, and like DIA, and I haven't, and then I've sent like some of the other ones later. Can you walk through why you like to do the whole packet at one time? Does it just feel neater for you on the back end?
Yeah, so I like to, the way that I do it is I prep all of these documents. This is what you need to open the transaction in SkySlope. And I always just tell my clients, hey, this is phase 1. And then phase 2 is we're going to accept a transaction. And then once we're in contract with a buyer, there's going to be more disclosures. So I try to just kind of like separate it out so they're not feeling like I'm constantly just, you know, putting all these forms into their inbox. So this is just the way that I've done it. There is no right or wrong way. You guys can do it however you want, but I just feel like if I have all of this, we can upload it in SkySlope, and that's just kind of completes step 1. I print out the SPQ, the TDS, I print those out and I give those to the seller as homework to fill out by hand. Those can be sent electronically, but typically I find that clients are texting me saying that they don't like, they'll say it's not working properly or it won't hit submit. Like I just feel like I'm constantly getting text messages with sellers that are unhappy when I send that electronically, but you can do that. It's just, I've always just handed it off to them at the time of the listing and I tell them I want it back on photo day. You can also include, if needed, the earthquake hazard report. If that's needed at the time, you can include that in the homework packet. And and that one's FLD. Oh, well, we're talking about the earthquake hazard report. What did you say? What's that? Oh. Well, that one's not really anything they have to fill out. You can bring the FLD at the time of the listing appointment, but you don't have to leave that one as homework. The other ones, they have to read
FLD?
it. Huh?
What's the FLD?
That's the lead-based paint disclosure. So that's prior, if the home is built prior to 1978. But that one's not really, I consider the other ones more homework because they need to read it and they need to answer questions and they need to write explanations. And sometimes people just need time for that. And that's why I pass it off to them at that time. And okay, so one last thing that I do when I go to the listing appointment is I print all of these things, I prep it, and then I make a copy and I staple it and I give them a copy of everything. So when I'm taking my contract back to the office, they have a copy there of everything that they just signed for me, because some people really care about, you know, hey, what did I just sign? I want a copy. So I just bring them a copy at my listing appointment. And it also works great because if they're not ready to sign, like maybe they're still on the fence if they want to sell, or maybe they're interviewing multiple agents, I'll say, great. I've left you a copy of the contract here in your file. You go ahead and look over it, and when you're ready, I'll come over with the original, or I can send you one electronically. So sometimes there's a little bit of like, you're there with a contract and you're like, you don't want to be that agent that's putting it under their nose, you know, just harassing them to sign it. So you can have your own file, they can have theirs. If they've decided not to sign, you can tell them that you've left them a copy of the contract for their review. And then that way you're not, you know, just kind of being like super aggressive with them. That's just how I do it. But one thing that I do is the DIA, the Disclosure Information Advisory, is kind of like instructions on how to fill out the SPQ and the TDS. So I always put that at the back of the packet, and I tell them, hey, when you're filling out your homework, if you have a question on something, go to the back of the copies and you can read the DIA, and that might answer some questions that you may have on the TDS or the SPQ. But I do have them sign it, and I take it with the listing agreement when I leave. So we're gonna go each document one by one, and feel free to like chime in if you guys have a comment or a question as we go through. Just let me know. But this first form here, this is disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship. So I just will tell the seller, this form here just states that I'm gonna represent you in this transaction as your real estate agent. Then we go to the second document, the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory. So I just remind them of the Fair Housing Act from 1971. And I explain that they cannot discriminate against a buyer based on their sex or their race or anything else. And then there's also information in here if they feel like they have been discriminated against. There's information in here on how they can report it. That's how I explain that one. Possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. And this form, actually, I just learned something new in here the other day. And now I'll have to find it again to explain it. But so this one just kind of explains, you know, how representation works. So we might represent a buyer that we show the house to, right? So this one talks about, like, what if I represent the buyer? What if I ask you to do a dual agency? They have an option to say yes or no. If they don't feel comfortable with the dual agency, they can tell you no, or if they do feel comfortable, it just kind of explains that in here a little bit about what dual agency is. And I don't know if you guys saw that article about the listing agent that did a dual agency and is getting sued right now.
I read the whole thing last night.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Honestly,
that was pretty
I
interesting.
try not to. Some situations, it's okay. Like two friends, you're just doing the paperwork. A tenant buying from the landlord, and they've asked you to do the paperwork. There's some situations where dual agency is okay, but in
Yeah,
all
but that guy didn't even give the homeowners the offers from other agents.
Yes. So, I mean, it's just kind of like a slippery slope. And, you know, I would rather refer it and get a referral fee than be in that sticky situation. I think EXP told an agent recently that they didn't want them to do a dual agency. So, you know, everybody likes the idea of getting a double commission, but I just want to just stress that this is a slippery slope. You can find yourself in an uncomfortable position. And if somebody does get upset and you do have to go to court, there is not very many laws that protect you when you're in a dual agency situation, because you ultimately were hired by the seller. Your oath of confidentiality is to the seller. You really work for the seller. So it's hard to represent all parties in that situation. So, you know, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but I just want to stress that, you know, really kind of think about how you feel about dual agency and come up with a plan. I mean, I'd probably just refer a buyer to one of you guys to handle it if I was in that situation. But there might be a situation where it does make sense. So, you know, it's kind of like there's some gray area there. But I basically just tell my client that this is a little bit of information about buyers and buyers agents and my role. And then we go to the next one. Wire fraud, I like to stress to my clients when I get to this form, and I do that with buyers as well, that this is a very important form, and I make sure that they're listening to me, because I know Stewart Title in Lincoln, they had a client that was a victim of wire fraud. So the buyer lost $60,000. So this is happening everywhere. It's a real thing. It happens in our area. And so I do take the time to explain this form to everyone. And what I say to them is that wire fraud is real, and that there could be scammers. They typically will reach out to our clients via email, and they will pretend to be a title company. And so what I tell them, I usually bring in my listing folder, I have Kelly Keith's business card. So if you have a title rep that you are consistently giving your business to, ask her for a stack of cards, staple it to the inside of your listing packet, and say, hey, once we are in contract, this is going to be the only person that will call you from the title company. This is your officer. So be suspicious of every email. Don't send your banking account information or, you know, anything like that through email. You want to do that in person with the notary at the final signing. And then I also explained to them that the title company that I use will set up a password protected portal for them, and that inside that portal, that would be an okay place for them to exchange information with their escrow officer. So I basically just inform them that this is real, and just let them know who's going to be handling their escrow, and just to question any other calls. And I do have sellers that will call me and say, hey, I got a weird call, I just wanted to run it by you. And I have said, yeah, that does sound weird, I'd probably ignore it. So, you know, just take the time, explain this. People have lost lots and lots of money through wire fraud. Okay, the residential listing agreement. So this is kind of like, there's not a whole lot that we fill out on the front end of an RLA, but you can put in the date that you prepared it, who the seller is, who the broker is. You must put a beginning date and an end date on your listing agreement. If you do not have a date here, you do not have a valid contract. So if anything comes up and you go back here, there's no beginning and end date, you don't have a contract. So super important that you make sure you're getting both of those dates on there.
So when you leave it with the person, do you leave those dates blank until after they sign it, or do you?
If I go in with a 6 months, so I do the day that I prepare it and I go 6 months out. If they tell me, hey, I'm not ready to list in 6 months, we're not signing the contract that day anyway. And I will come back when they're closer to, or I'll send them an electronic one with the update in the dates. And then sometimes they'll negotiate. They'll say, hey, I don't want to give 6 months on a contract. Like, I want you to shorten that down. I would be very leery of doing any less than 90 days. And if it was like an unusual property, I would want the whole 6 months if it was an unusual property. If it's out on acreage, maybe it has issues, maybe it's like way far out in BFE, those types of properties, they don't sell quick. So why go through the expense of paying for photography and marketing if they're not going to give you the correct amount of time to get it sold? So you can put a line through here and change the date and have everybody initial it. As long as you have initials, you can cross something out and handwrite in if needed when you're at the appointment. You would want to have the address of the property in here, 123 Main Street. You know, the city, the county, state, your parcel number. You need to make sure that the parcel number's in there. And then I will typically leave this portion blank here, the price, because that's something where you're going to want to have that conversation with your seller in person, and then you'll handwrite that in. But you also need to make sure on this line here, item A, that you're handwriting that out just like as you would in a check. So 120,000, you're going to write out 120,000. Compensation to broker. This is where you're going to fill in your percentage rate. So we are very fortunate that we work for a broker that kind of lets us set our own commission. I mean, obviously you have fees to pay.
30%.
You have fees to pay with EXP, so you don't want to cut yourself short. And then you need to also secure commission for the buyer's agent. So, you know, if you are thinking about doing a reduced commission, you know, really be careful that you're not cutting yourself short. I've definitely done that before. And it's a learning process. I think in the beginning, we are also eager to have a listing that we're willing to cut commissions. And then as we move along in our career and we realize like, hey, I just, you know, I spent, you know, 500 hours with this client beginning to end, like, and I only made $5,000. Like, was it worth it? So, you know, you'll get to where you know how to properly, you know, overcome objections when you are setting your commission rates with sellers. And I heard, I saw a video on TikTok, and I thought it was so perfect. Her objection to overcome that discussion of a lower commission was, okay, I've heard two. So one is, do you want good or cheap? Do you want a good agent or do you want a cheap agent? Because I'm a good agent. I'm not a cheap agent. So that's one question you could ask. But the one that I loved this weekend when I heard it was, why would you trust me to negotiate your largest asset if I cannot properly negotiate my own commission? And that's just putting it right back onto the seller's lap, because if you're negotiating on their behalf, you better have some good negotiation skills. So I thought that was a great script for overcoming that. But whatever you write here, so say that you do get, you do it at 5%, you're gonna have to come down here on item D, and you're going to disclose how much you're giving to the buyer's agent. And once again, our broker kind of lets us set these ourselves. Just make sure that you're not cutting anyone short. You're not cutting yourself short. Also, if I do have one of those sellers that's beating me up on a 6-month term, sometimes I will add a clause in here that says, if seller cancels contract prior to end date, seller agrees to reimburse listing agent for marketing costs. You know, sometimes people just think that I don't know. If I'm going to reduce it down, if they're giving me a hard time, you know, and I'm reducing it from 6 months to 3 months, and they're just kind of giving me that vibe like, hey, these people could cancel. Like, I don't know that they're 100% committed for whatever reason. If you ever feel like this seller isn't committed, you can add in all kinds of clauses in here.
Say, if you only want it for 3 months, then we're going with 7% commission.
I mean, this is all just kind of, you're in control of these terms and these commission rates. Sometimes other agents, they're not too happy when they see a reduced commission in the MLS. I've had agents call me and kind of say, oh my gosh, you're only offering a 2%. Like, why would you cut your, why are you discounting your rates? So, you know, just be prepared if you're going to reduce your commission and you're going to advertise a reduced commission in the MLS. You might get calls from agents that want to be a little bit snarky with you. I did have an agent and I said, well, if you don't like it, you could write in your offer that you want the seller to pay you more commission. And she did. And the seller did not give her any extra, but you can put it back onto her. Well, if you want more, ask the seller for more. This is what I secured for you, and move on. But just know that you might get some backlash on that. You can also do a flat rate too. So sometimes I do that on mobile homes, because the percentages don't really make sense when you're only selling something that's $50,000. So you can do a flat rate in that scenario, or maybe even on vacant land. If you wanted to do a flat rate versus percentage, you can mark this little dollar amount here and type it in, and then you would also address what was going to the buyer's agent in item D. This is here, this little clause here on F1. I've seen this before where they said, hey, my cousin or my next door neighbor might buy this house, and if they do, you know, I don't want to pay a real estate agent. I mean, hopefully you're never put in that position, but sometimes that does happen. This is where you would name the name. Whatever the neighbor's name is or the cousin's name, that means that they don't owe you a commission if they sell to that person. So if that ever comes up, that's what that little line is for there.
That way they can't just use anybody that they come across and say, hey.
Yes. So when I'm sitting down with the seller, I just explain, I said, this is your address, this is your parcel number. We talk about the dollar amount, and then we fill out that section, and then we go over the commissions. Typically, we've already shown them a net sheet that gives an example of what their proceeds would be. So this one, I do go a little fast, and I've already showed them what their proceeds are at this point. So, you know, I know this is kind of a sticky one for a lot. And then I have them initial it. And then here, item 4A, I ask them, is there anything that's attached to this house that you do not want to sell? Because you want to be able to list it in the agent notes ahead of time. You want to address it now. So if they have an heirloom chandelier that's passed down from family to family, you're going to write it in right now. I would probably say, hey, let's go ahead and swap that out right now before we go on the market, and have them go to Home Depot, buy something to put it in its place. That's what I would truly encourage them to do. I had one where they had like the husband was a train conductor, and they had like this big huge railroad crossing sign in the backyard. It weighed 1 million tons. I don't even know how they moved it off the property. Those types of things where it's like, yes, this is installed into the property, but it's excluded from the sale. Also, included items. Are you leaving the refrigerator? Are you leaving the washer and dryer? Have those filled out right now and in your listing agreement, so that doesn't come up later, that they've taken it, but they verbally said they leave it, or whatever. Just address it in your listing agreement on the front end. Leased items, I ask them, you probably will already know before you get there if there's a solar system, but you do need to identify, is there a leased solar system? Is there a leased alarm system? Propane tanks are often leased. I've never had anybody that had a leased water softener, but I always ask because it's on the form.
What about like if there's like my stepmother's still paying off the remodeling of her bathroom, and she was going to try and get that added on to her mortgage? Would that be like a separate thing if she were able to?
Is there a lien against the house?
No, because she's been paying it.
So it's like
far.
a private loan.
Uh-huh.
It's a private loan. I mean, honestly, she could get proceeds from her sale and just pay it off directly. Or if she works it out with the, she could ask somebody at title, hey, will you just send these guys a check when my proceeds come in? But since it's a personal loan, it's not really something.
I'm not really sure what kind of loan it is.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Also liens. So I had this come up last December. I had a house and unfortunately the seller was elderly and she had forgotten that she did have a lien against the house. But sometimes people do these PACE loans. So they need like a new roof or new air conditioning and heater or windows. So it's typically like something that's increases your energy efficiency, and they can't afford these repairs. And so they go with a program like a PACE loan where
I
they
think
pay for
that's
these
what it is.
renovations, and then the PACE loan puts a lien against their house so that if they ever sell it, that money gets paid back. So ask about that on the front end, because it can absolutely kill a deal if you get to the end of your escrow and you find out that your seller has a lien against their house and they owe a bunch of money and now there's no proceeds to help them buy the next house. I mean, it can absolutely kill a deal. So make sure you're talking to them, asking them, have they ever taken out a loan for you know, new windows or anything like that. Just have that conversation at this time.
Down payment assistance as well goes in there, correct?
Yes, yes. If they are aware that there was a down payment assistant, you can put that in there. And then just make sure that well, to be honest, if they say yes to anything on the liened items, I would just open up escrow right then and there before you even go on the market and start dealing with it on the front end. You definitely want to get that communicated with your escrow officer on the front end. Item 5C, this has improved for us recently because we merged MLSs, but you do have to disclose to a seller if you are not a subscriber of the MLS that their home should be put in. So you, on item C, you are disclosing that you are a member of MetroList. I don't know how to spell it today. And then that is the appropriate MLS for their home. If it's not, you're going to mark this box and you're going to disclose that to them. We do have to tell them that, like, if you're listing a house in LA, hey, this is going to be in a different MLS. So make sure that you're disclosing those.
Oh, I didn't do that. Oops.
Yeah. I mean, to be
But then when
honest,
people look things up on Zillow or Realtor.com, it still comes up, right? So
nobody's monitoring these, but this is a CYA, right? This is protecting you in the event that something goes bad. You do want to make sure that you're properly protected. Hey, I didn't know that she was going to list it in this MLS, and I think I could have gotten more money if it was listed in another MLS. Well, if you have this form where this box is checked and the seller signed it, then like you did disclose it, you're okay. So
Well, I had it listed in the MLS and the other MLS, so would I still need to do that?
I would, but then I would explain to him how you are, like what your plan is. Like, hey, I'm not a member of this MLS, but I have a business partner that is, and we're gonna partner up to make sure that you're not only in the CR MLS, but you're also gonna be in the Metro list. I would just explain it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the MLS. So right here, they do need to sign in this box here in item 6. This gives you permission to put it in the MLS. If they don't sign this, you don't have permission to put it in the MLS. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting initials here. And then the initial down here at the bottom too. So this form is 2 initials, and then you also have to initial here as well. On item 7D, you are identifying the date that you're going to start marketing it, and it's going to show as active in the MLS. So you're going to want to pick a date here. And, you know, sometimes these dates change. That's okay. But honestly, it helps our sellers to kind of have a goal anyway, because they might have to pack up boxes and declutter. And like when you're helping them set a date, it actually works to your advantage. But we do need to have this on our forms that tells EXP, yes, we took the listing on this date, but the seller doesn't want it in the MLS until this date, because we are actually, we're supposed to have these in within 48 hours of getting the listing agreement. And, you know, I've always just stuffed it in a folder and entered it into the MLS after I got photos back. And, you know, we had an agent recently who got like a little notification from the MLS saying, hey, you didn't get this in the MLS within 48 hours. And it all worked out. You know, there was no like negative action taken against them. But the way that I've been doing it is not the proper way. What we need to be doing is we can get everything in the MLS right when we get these forms back. And then we're setting a future date of when it is going to go live in the MLS.
That's when you have to fill out the SLEM, right? Or
well, they're not really using the SELM. We're putting this date here, and then we're going and we're directly putting it in the MLS within 48 hours.
so then it doesn't matter what the date is at the top of your contract?
No,
It does, because
It does.
they want us to put them in the MLS within 48 hours. We don't have to mark it as active, but we have to have it entered. Go ahead, Veronica. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Right,
No, it's fine. I just want to clarify, I'm totally okay being outed as the agent who mucked this one up and nearly got fined. So I really want to make sure I'm doing it right, because I thought I was, because I had the correct date in my RLA. And being a rule follower, I just input it into the MLS that way. The day I took the listing and the day that it went live was like 4 weeks apart. So you're saying what I need to do is I take a listing today and I have 48 hours to put it into the MLS. But how do I mark it? Because I'd have to have like the MLS open, but what do we call it? On hold?
It said in the instructions. I have not done one yet, because I have a bunch of ones that are coming up and nobody signed an agreement on yet. But from what I understand, and as soon as I go through the motions, I can update you guys. But apparently we can put a date in there where we want it to go live.
But that means it will automatically go live at like 12:01 a.m. on the day that we have it queued.
Now we can change it. But it's like we have to have it in there. I don't even think we can save it as incomplete. I think we have to do the future date.
I'm going to have to pull open. I'm just curious, like because I'm thinking there's like hold and on, like pending and active. I don't remember there being a drop down that would be like, not
I think
live.
It's your date. It's on MLS date, because like that was where you did your list date and you did your on MLS date as that day, and it published that day. So from what I understand, you're going to do a future date right there.
That's how I did my Coffee Creek one.
And then it just kind of sat there on the MLS side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then if you do change that date, the proper way is to have your seller sign a modification of terms, changing the on-market date.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So
no,
Veronica, that's what I did with Coffee Creek, and it went on at 12:01, like the day of the listing.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. That would make me a little anxious.
So it would make me anxious too, especially knowing that I didn't have photos in there. I'm like, oh my gosh. I probably do it a little bit longer than what I thought, just to like, I know that that's not correct, but like I need insurance that I'm not going to mess it up.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I like to like look over them like one final time before I push live. Like I do not want it to happen while I'm sleeping, for the love.
You can always just do your listing date. You know, you can always just have those dates reflect 48 hours of going live too. If you wanted to not have your client sign it until right before you go on the market. I know that it feels scary to do that sometimes because there's so much competition with other agents out there. You know, you might feel a little vulnerable, like somebody might swoop in and snag your listing. So that's really just going to be kind of your relationship with the seller, but you could always do it that way as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, no problem. And then, okay, so going down to the next page, and this one just talks about if the seller did not want anybody to market to the market the property to the public. So basically, if we were just like sharing it with other agents within the office and we weren't marketing it publicly, we need to have this one marked. And it was interesting because I just got a client into contract on a listing where the seller did not want the public coming in just because her husband had a lot of medical issues, and she did not want him to be uncomfortable with showing. So the agent actually was calling around saying, hey, do you have a buyer for this? And I said, yes. And we got into contract, which was really nice. So this does happen here. I know it's not the ideal situation, but it does happen for various reasons. So if you ever have a client that says, I don't want it in the MLS, I don't want people coming through, I want this to be on the down low, that would be this box here. Clear cooperation policy. So this one states that if we mark, I don't even know why this is here. I feel like it's sketchy to even mark this box ever, because clear cooperation is that is the California Association of Realtors rule. Like the DRE says we have to have it in there 48 hours after taking the listing. So if we marked this box and we said, oh, it doesn't apply to me, well, we better be able to back it up with proof that it doesn't apply to you, but I think it applies to everybody. So I'm not even like 100% sure why this exists here, but I would say don't mark it. Okay. And then this one, I explained to my client here about brokers and sellers' duties. And so typically what I'll say on this page 3 here is I'll say, hey, this form talks a little bit about my duty to you. And that once again comes in with that oath of confidentiality, right? Like I'm not going to disclose to anyone that my seller is willing to take 10,000 less than the list price. That's the secret. That's one of my duties to them. You can ask here, does the seller want to see buyer letters or do they not? You can address that on the front end on item 10C. It is kind of like dancing on a fair housing violation.
Yeah, I read a whole article about that, about how.
But you know what? Those letters do tug on heartstrings, and sellers, to some sellers, it's very important. So as long as you're advising them of the fair housing rules and you have this marked that the seller does want to see these, you're not, you're in the clear, right? Like you disclose to them what the fair housing is. They said they wanted to see these letters. Now you're covered if something did go wrong. Okay, item E here, investigations and reports. This just states that like all of those disclosure documents that we're leaving for homework, like we have 7 days to deliver those to the buyers. So this one basically here is like, within 5 days, they're going to give us that information, right? Because we have like a legal obligation to keep the transaction moving forward. So within 5 days, any reports, investigations, the disclosures, whatnot, they're supposed to have it back to us. And that's why I always say on photo day, because you're coming back after your listing appointment with a photographer. So that's a great time to get those disclosures back from them. Also a great time to do your AVID if you're really bad about doing your AVID like I am. If you can remember to have that printed on a clipboard the day you meet the photographer there, you're going to be spending time in the house anyway. So that's a great time to complete that form. This one talks a little bit about dual agency. You've already gone over it on the PRBS, but you can touch on it again. Or you can just kind of say like, hey, Mr. Seller, this talks a little bit about video cameras. If you have a video camera recording people, I have to disclose that, do you? have any cameras up. Photographs and internet advertising, I will briefly say, hey, if there's anything hanging on your walls that you do not want published to the internet, please have it removed prior to photo day. Also, the key safe and the lockbox, we do have this new form now that addresses lockboxes again, but I would typically say, hey, they're only, the only people that are permitted to open those are licensed agents. So, you know, I talk a little bit about the safety of having one of those Supra boxes on. And then this is the last page of the contract, and I'll typically say if there's a dispute that arises during this, that you agree to mediation and arbitration, and then I have them fill out all of these items here, their address, their telephone, their email, all that good stuff. When I come to the seller's advisory, this is where I talk about the disclosures again, and I just let them know that they have an obligation to disclose any defects known on the property to the seller. And they also have a duty to tell, or I'm sorry, the buyer. They also have a duty to tell the buyer of any repairs or modifications that they've made on the property. And they can do that very easily by just answering the questions on these forms that we have, the SPQ and the TDS. So I touch on that they need to be honest and truthful. And I also let them know that if they tell these things to me, that I have to disclose that to the buyer as well. So, you know, it's very important that they understand that part. California Consumer Privacy Act. So this one talks about there's going to be personal information submitted to the MLS. So we have those agent notes in there. There's also a link to the tax records that has the seller's name. Also, when the transaction closes, it will be public information, what they've sold their home for, what type of loan the buyer used. So we're just disclosing to them that there is information about this transaction that will be available to the public. Then my next one is market conditions. This is the one that it wasn't the PRBS, it was the MCA that I had a conversation with another agent on this market conditions. And I did not know that there was a clause in here that basically said that if a buyer is in contract on a house, they should not be out viewing other properties and writing offers. So that is in here under buyer considerations. It talks a little bit about what contingencies are. And then it also talks a little bit about you know, that the broker can make recommendations. Obviously they get to make the final answer. Like, we're here to recommend, we're here to advise. If there's multiple offers, we have to present all of them. That's why that dual agency guy is in trouble, is because, you know, we have to present all offers to our seller. Oh, right here, at times buyers may write offers on more than one property, even though the buyer intends to purchase only one. So I know that there's always, and it says it is not illegal to make offers on multiple properties with the intent to purchase one. The buyer can be obligated to many sellers if more than one accepts the buyer's offer. If the buyer has not disclosed that the buyer is writing multiple, so apparently we're supposed to disclose that. Nobody does this. I know that this is a topic that comes up a lot, and I just discovered it the other day. So if you guys are ever like representing that buyer who has you out writing like multiple offers on homes, and you're like, hey, is this legal? Like, should I be doing this? Apparently we can, but we're supposed to be disclosing that. So just fun fact that that's in there. The next one here. So now the SPQ and the TDS, these ones we can't really fill anything out. I don't know why this car's not letting me open that form for some reason, but there's really nothing to discuss in here. This is homework. We're leaving that with the seller. They need to fill out everything truthfully. If they mark yes on anything, they need an explanation. If they don't have enough room to finish writing the explanation, they can get a blank piece of paper and they can continue their explanation on a blank piece of paper. Just make sure that you're including that when you send that over to the buyer's agent, that you're submitting that extra sheet if there is any overflow on explanations there. Earthquake hazard reports. Nick, do you know why car won't let me? Unable to load the form. I don't know why I'm having a hard time. The earthquake hazard report form, this one we are handing to the seller to fill that out. One thing that I do tell my sellers is most people do not know the answers to the questions on earthquake hazard report. And I just highlight that there is a column that says, I don't know, so that they're not trying to guess and answer incorrectly. There's like really a column that says, I don't know, and it's okay for them to mark those boxes.
But yes, earthquake hazards.
Well, you know, it talks a lot about how the foundation is built and if there's a cripple wall, and like a lot of people don't know because they're not contractors and they didn't build the house and they don't know specific answers about their foundation. So I just like to highlight that there is a don't know column. The DIA, we already talked about that one. That one is kind of like instructions for the SPQ and the TDS. So they're just acknowledging that we've left them a copy. When they sign that, they're saying that we've left them a copy, and that just make sure you're leaving them the copy, which I don't know if anybody actually ever looks at it, but having it there. You guys, I don't know what is going on with my internet. Oh, I did get booted off the good internet. Maybe that's why. Okay, let's see. The fire hardening form is very confusing. I don't 100% understand it. And I think most of us know if we're in a high fire zone, like, do you pay fire insurance, Mr. Seller? If they say yes, then you're probably in a high fire zone.
Not anymore. That's why I need to move.
So there is a spot in here where they have to specifically say if they are or are not in a fire zone. And what I don't like is, like, it feels like maybe there's some liability there. But Nick had a great point, and we did this on one of my recent listings where we just ordered the NHD up front, and the NHD actually discloses if it is in a high fire zone or not. So I feel a little bit better about having my seller answer that when I know we have that NHD report. That's where we're getting our information from. I just wouldn't want to be incorrect on that. So, you know, I don't understand this form. If you guys want more information, I would just encourage you to go into eXp World and talk with a broker or go to a contracts class. What I do know is that in some areas where it is a high fire zone, apparently a condition of the sale is that you have to have a fire chief come, or a fire, huh? Oh, did you say something, Veronica?
No, sorry, my kids are in the car and they are chattering away. But I did have a question about ordering the NHD when you take the listing or right after.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, as a buyer's agent, used to writing in my preferred NHD. How do you address that with your buyers? Do you put it in the MLS notes for the agent to not write it into the contract?
I've been noticing lately that people have the NHD report uploaded in the agents or in the attachment section. And I've also seen on a couple occasions where agents are uploading instructions and they'll say NHD has been ordered, and they'll tell you what they want you to put in item 1. They'll tell you right down to the title company they're going to use, everything. So, you know, that's also something that could be countered out if you're the listing agent and the buyer's agent has recommended a different company than what you did. That's something you can counter out. I think most buyer's agents are okay changing that. But yeah, that would probably just have to be a counter offer if you've already ordered it.
I mean, isn't
Okay.
one the same as the other? If you've ordered NHD, doesn't it kind of come out the same no matter who you order it from?
Some are more in depth than others. But I think mostly the same information because it's based on a map, right? So it's how close we are to a dam, how close we are to an earthquake fault line, how close we are to a high fire zone. So it basically is the same information. I think like some reports are just maybe a little bit easier to read, or we just like our rep better, or maybe the price is cheaper on one versus the other and people are trying to be more budget savvy. So I mean, all different reasons why people use different companies. But I mean, if you're the listing agent and you're trying to protect your clients and you order that on the front end, you can just upload it into the MLS and say, hey, it's already ordered, mark this on your listing, or just counter it out. I think those would be, it'll be interesting to see kind of like how this form, like if it changes or it's fairly new. It just came out in May. So, and I have heard from other agents that are like up in Forest Hill, Placerville, those areas, that the fire departments were like, we have to do inspections. I mean, like it was almost like the DRE did not communicate with the Fires Association of California. So it was, from what I was understanding, is not everybody was on the same page, and those inspections were causing delays. So if you find yourself selling a home in one of those high fire zones and you need more information, I would just encourage you to go into the world and ask questions, because I personally have not been through one. I don't have a whole lot of experience on that form. Okay, and then this last one, the key safe. This is also, I don't think it's a new form, but I believe that it's kind of like a newer required item through EXP, and I actually kind of like it. It outlines like how you're gonna set up appointments. I mean, it doesn't outline it, it just creates a talking point on this discussion. And this is just kind of something that I've learned over time listing houses. You know, I've listed them and we haven't discussed showing instructions, and then, you know, we're just flying by the seat of our pants the whole time it's on the MLS, and I'm randomly shooting out text messages. Oh, you have a showing at 2, another one at 5, and then I just feel sometimes like it becomes unorganized and there's not like a clear schedule. So just one thing that I started doing is when I take the listing, we talk about what are their preferred times to show. So I can put instructions in the MLS, like showings are scheduled on, you know, Tuesdays through Fridays after 5. If you need something outside those hours, call me. But you can have your Calendly link and let them reserve their time. So, you know, it's just really nice to have that conversation. And, you know, like the baby takes a nap every day at 2. So if somebody's calling you and they want to show the house at 2, you can say, hey, this isn't a great time for my seller. And it just helps it feel more organized when you're able to kind of just set up that that schedule in advance. And this form here, so this talks about giving permission to put a lockbox on. And, you know, I know that we have those like little key codes, those little 4-digit codes that we put on the property. And, you know, really, they're not super secure. If you give that combo out in the MLS, you don't know if an agent is printing out that form and leaving it somewhere where anybody could find it and see a 4-digit code to get a key. So, you know, those combo boxes, they're convenient, but I want you guys to understand that they're not very secure. And I would be very strict on who I'm giving that combo to if I did have it on a house. I had one in Gridley, and I had an agent called me. She didn't text. She called me. I gave her the combo. I could not remember who that agent was. I couldn't remember her name, her phone number. It was just a verbal conversation. I gave it to her. Well, somebody came in my seller's house. It was an agent because the neighbor saw the whole thing happen and went and told my client. And so what had happened is I had given it to her and she had showed the property. And then I was advertising an open house. Well, my client went into contract the day before, so we canceled the open house. Well, she didn't pay attention to the MLS that it was pending and it was no longer in contract. So she showed up to the open house thinking there was an open house. Well, when the open house never happened, she just let herself in the combo and showed the property anyway. And my seller was not happy with me. So that was my personal experience with a combo box. And that kind of caused me to be very strict about who I'm giving those combos to. And sometimes I will, like if we're in contract and I know that there's going to be inspections or contractors going over there, sometimes I'll just move it over. I'll have like an empty combo there and I'll move it over at a certain point. There's just different reasons why it's convenient to use them, but just always keep in mind that they're not secure. So this kind of just talks about how a super box is secure, and you can have that conversation with them. And then also it gives us permission to put the sign on the property. And then this one tells us how they want us to show the property. Do they want us to wear masks? Do they want us to have people remove their shoes? Where's the dog going to be? Are they taking the dog with them during showings? Is the dog going to be in the backyard? We need to tell agents, don't go in the backyard. If you write an offer, we will, we'll make sure that there is a time where you can go in the backyard without the dog. So, you're really wanting to have those conversations with them, on what those showing instructions look like. So that's kind of all of the car forms. The other one that, and I think I think these are all uploaded into the Dream Team. Let me find it really quick. Hang on. Printables right here. The other one that I like, so we have one that is property and services information. So this one's just kind of like generic, and these are questions, I put this with the homework packet. These are questions that we're gonna get asked either by a buyer's agent towards the end of the sale. They're gonna want this information. And then also, maybe even during like when we're marketing and stuff. So these are just commonly asked questions, and we have them fill it out on the front end. What's the code to the gated community? What number is your mailbox? Is there a garage door keypad? What is the code? What's the code to the alarm system? Then once you are, who does your pool? Who does your lawn? What pest company do you use? Once you're kind of at the end of the transaction, right before closing, you can send this over to the buyer's agent, and it's like super appreciated. And then you're not getting those text messages later. Who's the water company? Where's the mail key? Where is the mailbox? What's the number? So yeah, look at this one. Do you want the buyer to forward any stray mail? So this is just kind of like as a courtesy to the buyer, but also keeps you from having to answer a whole bunch of random text messages. And then the other one that I like to give during homework. This helps you when you're writing your listing, when you're putting it into the MLS. You can talk about upgrades that have happened to the house. And I typically tell my clients, like, tell me what's happened in the last 5 years, right? Like, we don't need to know what they did 20 years ago. We're trying to identify some value that's there, and we're going to give this form to the appraiser. So what updates have you done? How much did it cost you? And this is pretty important because there are things that a homeowner can do that they do to homes that change the effective age, right? So like a home that's 40 years old but has all new electrical and plumbing, well, it's no longer a 40-year-old home because it has brand new plumbing and electrical. And that's not something where an appraiser is going to walk in and go, oh, wow, this has brand new plumbing. They don't see it. It's in the walls. But if we are able to write these things down, we can communicate with the appraiser, and we can change the C rating. So I don't know if you guys are looking at your appraisal reports, but there is a C rating, and the difference between a C rating, sometimes it could be $20,000 or $30,000. So C1 would be like a fixer-upper. That's a home that has a lot of deferred maintenance. And C4 would be a brand new home from a builder. And then the 2 and the 3, those are typically the homes that we're selling, right? So 2 would probably be a home that was 20 years old and hasn't had any updates and is looking a little shabby. And then 3, I take that back. I think most homes are C2. But a C3 would be something that's had a lot of custom upgrades. So that's where you're going to see, updated kitchens, updated patios.
That's the things to tell you when I'm done.
Custom tile showers. All of those things can change your C rating, and the increase between your home and the model match down the street. If you have a lot of upgrades, it could be significant. So this is a great form. And I use it on every single one. It was actually a seller that did this for me. When I sold her house, she handed me one of these, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is genius. And her home appraised. I gave that to the appraiser, and he was very thankful. He's like, oh my gosh, this was great. So we just started doing it with every single one. And I will actually offer it to my clients. This is a great way to help your buyers. If they're thinking about refinancing them, help them with their appraisal, by giving them this form and kind of coaching them on the process. I'll tell a client, hey, you might have painted your house yourself, but the appraiser doesn't need to know that. So if you spent $500 on paint, well, you might say the cost of the improvement is actually like $2,000 because I did all the work, things like that. I tell them to add their labor costs in there. So
can I get a copy of that sheet you have that you give to your sellers for things they need to do to get their house ready?
Well, all of this, I can email it to you. I have your email, Sandra, so I'll email it over to you. I think they're all in Dream Team under the file section, but we can email it over. So that was.
I don't know if I've ever been in where you're talking about. I've never seen what you're showing us.
Oh yeah. Did you see the form?
I saw the form that you're showing us, but I've never seen it before.
Oh,
Sandra, I think she's pulling it from Trello, but it's also somewhere else. It's in our Facebook page too. Correct, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you should give us a class, Kelly, on Trello.